6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first of all, I want to acknowledge and note in the minutes that Danielle is absent and excused. Begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically Nooksack and Lummi tribes, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin, throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. On behalf of everyone here, we want to express our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Nooksack and Lummi tribes, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Next step is flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Any changes to the agenda?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Motion to approve agenda is written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So now we will adjourn to executive session for bargaining. This will be about 15 minutes. And then we will resume the meeting after that. And of course, no decision to be made during executive session. So we will go to Bill's office. And then just hang tight here. Thank you. Finally worked out this way. We had to end it this week. Thank you for your patience. I would now reconvene at 6:19. And I would like to entertain a motion to change the agenda for action items. Add action item C, consideration of approval of MBEA contract. And then action item D, consideration of approval of PSE contract.
Motion to add, consideration of MBEA contract and consideration of PSE contract to the agenda.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So that will come after the two other action items, resolution and interim superintendent's contract. So next up is good of the order.
Yep, I'll make it quick. Today's last day of school. Just wanted to acknowledge and thank our staff for job well done this school year under some difficult and significant conditions. Everything we finished the year and stopped by the schools, assemblies going on, field day, had graduation last week, awards assembly. So the good of the order is that we had school, kids did well. We made it to the end of the year, got them home on the buses today. Didn't hear anything back about that. And I think it's a job well done. I think we let our staff know that they did a good job and looking forward to next fall. You guys are, not me. So anyway, good of the order is job well done for our staff. Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you. Next up is consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is information from audience. Tammy, do we have any? First of all, I want to acknowledge that I received a letter from Sarah Stracella and Mike Limbo regarding high school class sizes in their two subject matters. So that would be math and Spanish for this upcoming school year. And it's I will. I don't think it did it go to anyone else?
I got
I
it.
got it.
I got it.
Okay. So that wanted to make sure that you all got a chance to see that. So first up is Ty Bartman.
Actually, I drew an arrow.
Yeah.
She's gonna go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Natalie Chavez. Thank you for listening to public comments this evening. It was disheartening for me to see a Whatcom Public Health Advisory Board member, a retired nurse, Joni Hensley, from this community. She spoke last month at the May 21st Whatcom County Council meeting in support of having funding get approved for a school-based health clinic in the Mount Baker School District. SBHC is what we call school-based health clinics for short. A SBHC in Mount Baker School District would not serve all East Whatcom County community members. It would only be serving students in this region. The feds and Big Pharma have been pushing states to implement SBHCs, and Merck, the maker of the Gardasil HPV vaccine, is one of the funders of the School-Based Health Alliance. So a big financial conflict of interest there. And HPV vaccines are being pushed upon preteens and teens behind their parents' backs and without parental permission by using incentives, pressure, coercion, and student clubs in schools. There have been numerous preteens and teens who have been permanently injured following these toxic HPV vaccines, which include neurological conditions like transverse myelitis. And there are numerous HPV vaccine-related lawsuits under the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. But unfortunately, the vaccine-injured children's lives are permanently altered and will never be the same, and some of them have committed suicide. All the while, Merck and Big Pharma continue to profit millions of dollars and have complete liability immunity. I encourage you all to review the law firm website, wisnerbaum.com, and I have written it down for you on these sheets. There is a Gardasil link on that site, and they advertise that they have, quote, top Gardasil lawyers in America, unquote, and they share some of the severe side effects that some of their plaintiffs have experienced. So I printed off information for each of you regarding SBHCs so that you can educate yourselves on this controversial issue, and also that law firm website is on there as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, Todd Redmore, thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit.
Yep.
All right. Okay, 31 years at Mount Baker High School. It feels like I just got kicked in the gut. Last night I made some enemies saying that it felt like the district union didn't care. I was not behind the scenes. I took back that statement and regret my choice of words. But the truth still is that I'm frustrated with both sides of the contract. I appreciate the people that went to bat for all people getting cut, not just me. I'm really questioning that a 0.75% pay raise in the second year of the contract is basically coming off the backs of a few of those that Mount Baker is known for: athletics, CTE, FFA, band, and choir. To only be for 1 year is supposed to make us feel better, and in over a year, maybe it will. What happens later when we drop another 50 to 100 students? You cut it once, it'll get cut again. We cut 67 days this year, or after this year, 1.67 staff this year, and have 7 to 12 less FTE as this year. Last year, we lost a business program. This year, foods and nutrition, floral, and junior high agri-science, meaning 8th graders are not likely to be an FFA. Our advisory members helped us decide where to cut with the loss of just an ag teacher. Puget Sound Junior Show, where 22 kids made $23,000 a week ago. Trap shooting and at least 5 career development events. Our FFA is at 108, highest membership in 10 years despite declining enrollment in the school district and high school. We keep kids in school, and I know we're not the only ones. 348 extended days last year, and we're paid for 129 because we believe in the program. Then this 25% cut. It has to be the Northwest Washington Fair in 2025 and much more. I'm going to need to find a summer job. I should get a job this summer, but the kids and I are already committed for their fair. And our extended days were filled in January. I have charts and graphs that I'll share via email later. According to my draft numbers, based on a 10% decline in projected enrollment, we will have about 152,000 in surplus for our CT budget that we have to spend or give it back or carry over. So it's going to backfill gaps except our extended days. The only positions that are cut and funded next year by the state are all in CTE. Since 1995, I've applied for and received well over $2 million in district grants and school timber sales, most of them in the last 10 years. And those didn't go to just CTE. This year, we got $381,000 in grants for expanding, in part of that for expanding into manufacturing career prep program and maintaining as much as we could to prepare for the negative impact the Skills Center in Meridian will have in 4 to 5 years. And we will lose a lot of kids to hire a temporary, and we'll lose a lot of kids to hire a temporary career work-based learning specialist. Then the CT director position was also cut by 25% for next year. What 25% of state mandated work do you want me to not do and not have a CTE program approved? The answer is not to work it out with your principal when he's already stretched paper thin. This was an agreement between the district and the MBA, and we were not communicated with at all from the district about our program and the cuts. In 1 year, we went from being one of the biggest CTE programs with the most graduation pathways north of Seattle for a school our size, one that other schools visited, talked to, and tried to model, to probably the smallest CTE program in the county. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Next up is Community Davis.
It feels good to be supported. That was my pitch after my first year working here, when I encouraged Nicole Jones to come take a job here as an agriculture teacher. The building administration, coworkers, and the community have all supported a thriving agriculture program. Our career and technical education department is something that is marveled at by other school districts and communities across the state. My name is Karina, and I've been here for the last 3 years. I understand that our district is financially struggling. In the last year, our students have lost access to the business program. Next year, they will lose access to culinary arts and a large portion of our agriculture department. All floral design, landscaping, robotics, plant biology, and 8th grade ag science classes have been cut. Our wood shop and technology classes are being run as doubled with large class sizes. Who loses in this scenario? Our students. With the non-rehiring of an ag teacher, our students are standing to lose floriculture, marketing, food science, first-year member, employment skills, career and leadership development events. Several of these were state placers this year. They will also lose the expansion of raising new species of livestock, several community service opportunities and recreational events, and they have all less around all support without our third advisor. With the loss of an ag teacher, our community is going to lose community floral night, monthly floral club, the annual Easter egg hunt for young kids, plant sale variety, community service work, and probably a lot more of some really tough conversations this next week. We simply cannot absorb the work that our third ag teacher did. In 2022 to 2023, we worked 348 extended days between the three of us, and that's 2,436 additional hours outside the school day. With the proposed cuts of 25% to all extended contracts for a year, and even those into the second year, students are going to be among those who suffer, along with the staff that now have to figure out a way to make up those salary differences. Because I cannot afford to continue to donate time to a district that doesn't make it feel like I'm fully appreciated about what we put in. We will now need to continue to make even more cuts to the ag program, and this all comes at a cost to students, when 72% of our extended days are student contact time. We've minimized the other as much as possible. This tentative agreement between the district and MBEA does not leave me thinking that our students are supported. As an individual, I'm really struggling to reconcile the fact that the district and the MBEA are asking for a 0.75 salary increase in the second year of this agreement, while simultaneously defunding student opportunities like band, choir, athletics, and CTE. We have cut programs that bring students in and give them a place and a purpose and a chance to find what they're good at and excel at it. I am cautious that after this 2-year agreement, when programs that keep kids in school are decimated, that we won't see the enrollment increase we need to bring these opportunities back. I feel sick for our kids that are seniors next year. In the fall and winter, you voiced support about wanting to keep opportunities wherever possible. By ratifying the proposed agreement between the district and MBEA, you are supporting cuts for athletics, CTE, band, choir, that hasn't been communicated to the community. I really ask you to consider this decision carefully. We really love this district, the kids, the community, and I still want to be able to tell people that it feels good to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who did not sign up, who would like to speak? If not, next up is board comments. Start with you, Jason.
Since we've last, the day before graduation, there was a really good choir concert. Those kids are really good, so that's pretty good. The other day, I went to the Academic Excellence Assembly. That was really good to hear what the teachers have to say about the students, and
on different levels from Spanish 1 to 4 to welding to Latin dance to the whole 9 yards. So that was good. And graduation for my first time was pretty awesome. That was a good time and it wasn't too hot, so it was perfect. That's all I got.
Um, I attended the timber tour. And it was put on by the Whatcom Women in Timber. Learned a lot about that. Retaining the information, not as easy, it's not really my strong suit, but I do remember learning a lot and I highly recommend it to the rest of the board to check that out next year. 'Cause it's a really cool deal and I don't really have anything else to say.
Regarding the letter we got about the increased class sizes, I think I'd like to understand more about that. And I'd also like to understand more about the comments that we got today with the program and you know, the impact and solutions that can be worked on. So I'd like to follow up with your leadership and get a better understanding of it. See what we can do.
So for me, I also appreciated graduation. It was very nice graduation. I attended the Board of Natural Resources summer field trip in OMAC, which looked at a lot of state managed lands there. And also got a good opportunity to talk with several of the board members from the Board of Natural Resources, which is always a great chance to visit, and particularly Jim Cahill, who's the governor's assistant on is one of the key budget writers in the state. So we went over a number of K-12 education budget issues, and I was able to point out some of the challenges that we face in the small district. And then also, along with Brenna, attended the Whatcom Forest tour. One of the highlights, we stopped at a state forest timber sale, DNR managed timber sale, being harvested by Frank Harkness and his sons JR and Brandon. And I pointed out that the revenue from the sale would provide approximately $90,000 for Mount Baker School District, that one timber sale. So I think that was a good opportunity to look at the work in action. And also I met with Phil to discuss issues that we should be aware of for the future. And I want to thank you for your valuable insights. And Phil has offered to meet with each board member to both for wrap up and his observations and insights for the future. So I encourage you to set aside time to do that. I think you've you know, that's one of the things you've been able to provide a new set of eyes that with a lot of experience and can help us think about some of the things we need to be thinking about over the next few years. And also I had a chance to talk with Chris Henke from the DNR, and I've asked him to provide us a listing of current and proposed state forest timber sales so we can incorporate that into our budget process. So I hope to see that fairly soon. That's all I had for this month. Um, Next up are action items. And first up is Mount Baker Resolution 23-24-20 WIAA membership. This is something that we do each year and is a necessary part of our athletes being able to compete in interscholastic athletics. You have to be a member of the WIAA to do so. So any questions on? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 23-24-20.
Motion to approve resolution 23-24-20.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then next up is interim superintendent's contract with Nick Perigo. Any questions on that one?
I have a question, but I think it's probably worth making a comment on, right? So,
Well, your comment's fine too.
yeah. So we spent some time working on this, and you know, the compensation is higher than what you were getting before, but it's still quite a bit less than what other superintendents, and I think that reflects the fact that it is an interim position and that's appropriate. And you know, I'm looking forward to a successful year and doing everything we can. I know we've got a lot of challenges this year, but you know, we have reduced the district office by 2 positions.
Mhm.
And I still get questions about the interim position and people not understanding that we're going to be doing a full-time search. So that's probably worth repeating often, that we will be doing a full-time search, and that dollar value is going to be quite a bit higher at that time to be competitive with Whatcom County. So, yeah, I feel this is the right decision.
Anything else?
I agree.
Yeah, I also, you know, I appreciate Nick's willingness to step in at this point, and I think this has been a good half a year for as far as gaining experience working with Phil too. So I think we're that and as you pointed out, Ed, by consolidating positions, eliminating that the separate position, director of operations, and then moving that, spreading those duties amongst the rest of the admin team, we're saving a position just in that. So. And with that, I entertain a motion to approve the interim superintendent's contract.
Motion to approve interim superintendent's contract.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And so next up is consideration of the MBEA contract. And Phil, I'd like you to start this one out and introduce the contract. And
Yeah, and I'll invite Nick up as well. So MBEA negotiated with the school district. We had to reduce expenditure to try to meet our revenues. We're looking at 1448 total students next year in terms of filling our budget. Hopefully that comes in higher. We had cordial bargaining and negotiation within the sessions. We had Buzz Porter on our side of the table, and we had Greg Aller on the other side of the table. We had our parameters for going in with, you know, cutting over $2 million and trying to meet those budget constraints, had bumpers on them. And so just having those conversations around cleaning up some language And at the same time, lowering our costs so that we can meet some binding conditions and show us that we're moving in a positive direction. So I don't think everybody's happy with the way it came out, but I think it's a good sign because we have a contract and we're moving forward with what we have. So with that said, I've been on a lot of contract and bargaining. It was one of the more difficult ones just because of the budget cuts we had to make. And so I appreciate what MBA has done to agree with us, and I acknowledge both sides of the table that pain that it causes. So but it is what it is, and here we are. It's a 2-year contract. Year 1 is a 3.7 IPD raise passed through from the state. Year 2 is whatever IPD is plus a 0.7 raise on the other side, in addition to the COLA. Nick, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you captured everything. It was a hard bargain, as far as, the reductions that needed to occur. You know, bargaining without financial reductions can be challenging on its own, coupled with where we are right now, made it that much harder. And I've shared with you guys before, I think the piece too with one of our biggest challenges with the way the budget worked this year was IPD being established at 3.7% by the state. However, them also removing 3% of the revenue. So it's essentially having to work with 0.7, not 3.7. And so when we agreed to meet salary increases that are requested at that level that aren't keeping up with what state is funding, that's where those harder conversations are born.
And I would add, and I hear the public testimony. I hear you loud and clear. Much of this is directed at us at the district level, trying to come into trying to find some solutions. But a lot of it needs to be directed to our state legislators. And I'll say that again, just need to be directed to our state legislators about taking action around school funding. The loss of 3% regionalization this year and last year, it's over about $600,000 just in regionalization. And in addition to MSOC, so escalation costs of insurance and so forth. So I hope, and we've already met with some of our legislators around the issues that we've been talking about. I have another meeting with a couple down south that also represent Mount Baker. Hopefully there will be some legislative action. There's too many school districts that are tipping over into financial distress, and we've got to get to a place where funding their schools is better than they are now. So with that said.
So my understanding is that as of right now, our binding conditions require us to have a 4% fund balance at the end of next school year. And we are hoping that we're going to get an extension on that. It says that our binding conditions are going to change to be not a 4% fund balance, but just that we need to have more revenue than expenses next year. And we'll have to have a 4% the following year. So as of right now, we're still not meeting our binding conditions, given that 80% of our costs are salary.
That's correct.
We haven't even made enough cuts to meet that as is. So we're somewhat maybe taking a small risk, small calculated risk in approving these contracts as is, that we'll be able to meet our binding conditions.
That's correct.
Okay, and you know, I know we heard from a few people. I'm sure there was a lot of people that would have liked to have spoken tonight, but once these contracts are approved, how much wiggle room does the district office have in discretion of supporting programs if there is money available for our various programs?
There's a couple of thoughts from that. The first one revolves around enrollment. So if enrollment comes in 30 or 40 above what we've projected, that gives us a little bit of bump. We still don't know where we're, in fund balance is gonna be with our, with this year's budget. We won't know until the end of October, November, when Brian works, through the books and closes everything out there. We do have, some grant money or some, you know, I've got lab money, title dollars, maybe some carry forward along the way, but there are positions that we don't know, we may have to fill. For example, kindergarten enrollment, we don't know where that's gonna come in yet. We know we have a small class, senior class going out, but we don't know what that kindergarten class is at yet. So everything right now revolves around our enrollment, and so we'll get a better idea of what that looks like with the first day of school, and then October 1 is the first day that we have to report to the state. So
So I'll give you an example to try to answer your question. Mountain School, North Cascades Institute is attended by our sixth grade classes at all three elementary schools. And Bridget and Brian worked together to secure some grant funds for that. And because we knew we were gonna have some leftover grant funds, and because we wanted to ensure that staff were feeling properly supported in attending that trip, we engaged with MBEA around signing an MOU to provide them adequate financial resources to take that time away from their family and their lives to go spend 3 days in the woods with some kids. But that was because we had the financial resources to do it. So I hope that answers your question, that if
I think, so there are, even after a contract is signed, an MOU can be issued to
that's correct.
move funding into, I guess, the highest priority.
that's right.
Okay. And I think we've said before as a board that our highest value is student learning, right? So I don't see that changing in terms of as funds become available, that would still be the top priority. And I know that there's be some tough decisions around how to prioritize, but hopefully we're talking about that. You guys are talking with the staff and different departments that we have that are successful and really adding value to the district. Given that, you know, it's kind of one supports the other, right? Because we have programs that help bring in students, which help enrollment, which help the funding, right? So
That's right.
we want to, I would think that we would prioritize those at the top, right?
That's right. And just to add on to that, Ed, is that's the whole idea around developing a TK program, is to bring students in and tap into that neighborhood base around transitional kindergarten. And at the same time, the after hours program, tutorial program, the academy to help retain kids that maybe go to the ALE alternative learning route and try to retain those students rather than having them go online somewhere with WABA or go to another school district or to Running Start. So trying to keep students in our schools.
Is this an impossible thing to table till next meeting? Just asking a question, might not be the right question, but it's the question.
What was that, Jason?
Is this possible to table till the next meeting?
The approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. I think the value of approving it this meeting is to be able to nail down our employment costs for next year as Brian finishes the budget. Next meeting, we would have to, we need to approve the budget at our next meeting. And unless we have a concrete figure, which this would give going into our next meeting, we couldn't actually, we'd have to run that meeting until we got that concrete figure, however long it took. And so I think being able to nail down, I nail down those figures now will make finishing the budget that much easier.
Sorry, when's the budget?
Hmm?
When are we expected to have?
We have to
Budget.
approve it at the next meeting.
Our plan is a budget approval at the June 27th meeting.
Okay. And how much time are we gonna have to review that? Go through it and
How
understand.
much time to what?
How much time are we gonna have to digest that? I guess.
2 weeks.
Well, as soon as we got it tonight, but, I mean, given all the financial challenges that we had, it seems like that's something that we really wanna spend some time on and dive into a bit. Understand, I realize we've gone on a segue here, but,
Brian, do you want to address that question?
I sent all 5 funds to ESD for review yesterday, received their feedback and have sent back the 4 minor funds that we'll talk about today. And we're making some adjustments in the contract and staffing side of things. So Pam hopes to finish those tomorrow. And I hope to finish the full 1-year budget on Monday and send it to ESD for review. So it could be reviewed and finished by ESD on that Monday, and then I can prepare some of those same reports that we looked at last time for you guys with the actual budget approved by ESD. That's the fastest we'd have it done is Monday. I think by Wednesday, having some things to you guys is fairly reasonable.
Of next week?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, I'm fairly confident I can push the whole budget for review on Monday. Pam, we're just re-auditing that staffing plan. And then the rest of it, I think I made the adjustments that the ESD recommended. So.
Okay.
Yep.
But is that only if we approve the contracts tonight? After, if we didn't approve those, then Monday you would have not the full picture?
Let me say that differently. If you propose changes to the contract,
right,
we won't have the budget by
Right.
June 27th.
Yeah.
Not to say that, I mean, like,
Right.
I could try, but we're moving forward with the assumption that what was bargained and agreed upon is what's in the budget.
Yeah, so what Brian needs is both the bottom line number and the details. Because the employment cost change depending not just on the bottom line figure, but on the contract details. Because you have to run those contract details with each employee's salary level, all, it's a complex mix of that interfaces with payroll. So it does take quite a bit of staff time to mesh those, and that's again, one of the reasons, because I really don't think that we don't have the money to expand the bottom line of the contracts.
yeah. I mean, I guess the risk is until we sign it, that the unions could make a change, but at the same time, I see some value in trying to connect with people and understand a little bit more about these contracts prior to approving them. You could do them both,
Well, I don't know.
I would say that we came to the table, we bargained in good faith.
That's all we asked you to do, and this is what you came back with, this is what was agreed.
Yeah,
upon.
No, I agree with that.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, it's never gonna be right. It all is really unfortunate that we're in this situation and that these people are in this situation. I don't know what postponing it is, what's gonna change. That's what I don't know.
It most likely won't, it's just a matter of
Asking, being able to ask some questions
Asking
and
some
figure out some
questions.
numbers and see where we're at, like, I don't know, like, how often if our enrollment numbers are up, like, how often are we gonna have, how's that work with, if there's extra money to go back into some of these programs? Like, how often are we, okay, let's just say monthly, are we gonna know a monthly number? Are we gonna know, every 3 month number? Like, how does that work? Cause we're not obviously gonna, oh, we got a little extra now, so we're gonna throw it in here and then go, oh, we shouldn't have done that so soon, you know?
That's right, and that's why I keep talking about enrollment. Anything extra has to go into our budget to build our fund balance back. And if we continue to spend, it just puts us in a deeper hole and we'll be cutting again next year at this time.
Right.
So when we get a little bit more, that just builds that balance and puts us on the positive side of the ledger.
Cause we
Yeah, we
prefer
still-
wanna have one bad year and not drag out two,
That's right.
Right.
make changes to still make it a bad year and then make next year bad. I personally would like to see this year bad and see gains next year.
Yeah, the changes that we that we put in place this year carry through the following year, that's twice as much savings. And so you, and as Phil mentioned, we still will have an uphill battle to achieve that fund balance. And I think, you know, the point is well made that this year, we're also working with that 3.7 IPD, which made this year's cuts greater than they would have needed to be had the IPD not come out that high, because the state only provides funds for that 3.7% for state-funded positions, which are on the order of 60% of our employees. So we have to come up with the difference, which could have gone to fund balance had the IPT not been as high. So, and then, you know, we're still trying to make the case on MSOCs and special ed, which I know those were two of the main things I covered with Jim Cahill too, that we can't keep going at this. Where the districts are paying known costs that really should be state costs. And that I think is the crux of our problem right here, is the special ed, MSOCs, and a few other things having to do with the prototypical school model. It does not fit small districts.
Right.
I mean, you still have to have certain things, whether you have the district size that's envisioned in the prototypical school model. So would I have liked the bargaining to come out a little different? I'm always that, you always would, but that's the nature of bargaining. Is that you're not going to each side get exactly what you want, but I think as Phil said, it was a cordial bargaining. I think the fact that we were able to accomplish it earlier than we ever have in the time I've been on the board shows that both sides did bargain in good faith. Once you reach a bargain, so as I think Buzz mentioned to us, you can't offer something and then take it back. And so it's there's some complications in the bargaining process. So
How much work is involved in the MOU? What's that process like?
It varies. My experience in developing an MOU with MBDA is pretty straightforward. As far as, I think we have a good, strong working relationship with their union leadership and, we're able to use our legal counsel to help support that process. So I don't think the MOU process is, in my opinion, a cumbersome one.
So I understand, doesn't mean everyone needs to
No.
get physically together
No.
to look at that, or?
No, it's traditionally,
Leadership.
yeah, the union leadership and the members of the cabinet.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done that a number of times.
It's pretty common practice.
The class sizes continue to be a concern, but I think there again, because salaries make up approximately 80 or a little more than 80% of our budget. There's really not a lot of wiggle room there. The K3 class sizes are dictated by our funding. We have to keep them under a certain size, the rest of them we have to make up the difference. And we have, we're cutting non-classroom positions, two director positions, moving that in the district office, moving that around to others taking on the duties. So I think we're doing the best we can in a challenging situation.
Well, I guess my thought is knowing that an MOU can be used for maybe other vehicles outside of that to move funding takes a little bit of the pressure off of this.
It makes it work, at least for our handling
Yeah.
side.
So I guess my question is, would you like to move ahead with a vote on the MBA contract tonight?
I say yes.
Jason?
Yeah,
Ed?
I personally think to be knowing the MOU and understand a little bit better now, and it's not that's an option and a darn good option. And yeah,
So I entertain a motion, approve the MBA contract.
Motion to approve MBA contract.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up is PSC contract.
Yes, they went smoother. A lot of language changes, just cleaning things up, some language around seniority. Coming back with the financial package of IPD this year, 3.7. And then whatever IPD is next year. Nothing else other than that.
So here again, questions, comments?
Do both unions work the same way in terms of?
In bargaining and negotiating, yeah, we had a negotiator on our side, Christine
Widener,
Widener, and
from the same firm that Buzz works for.
yeah, and Dan Peterson.
On the PSC side.
And I've worked with Dan in the past.
And they also use an MOU to make changes.
You do MOUs, we've done that in the past. They had a unanimous vote, I understand.
Okay.
Ratification.
Okay. Great.
So if there's no further questions, I entertain a motion to approve the PSC contract.
Motion to approve PSC contract.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Makes sense.
Next up is Director of Finance report.
Okay, as Brian worked his way up, just want to frame it, was we want to talk a little bit about, we'll get there, about a 4-year, this will be the 4-year budget when we get there. I just want to talk a little bit about what Brian's going to talk about in terms of what he has to present tonight and how that leads into 4-year budget process. We'll talk a little bit more about that after it's done.
presenting? The 4-year budget or the 4 funds first? Where do you want to start?
We want.
Well, I think what I wanted to have, so if
Budget's
the
under
finance, if you can do the 4 funds
Finance
first,
report first,
and then our board discussion is
around the
is
4-year
about the
budget.
4-year budget. So then if you could provide the background, what background information you have to help kick off that
That's right.
that discussion.
Sure can. Let me figure out how to share my
After the
screen.
superintendent's report. So maybe just do the 4 funds right now and then hold off on the
You got it.
4-year part.
All right, so we'll start with transportation vehicle fund. The only purpose for this fund is to buy yellow buses. There are times when you can make a major repair, but the repairs tend to be so major that it's better just to buy a new bus anyway. And OSPI has a schedule of depreciation. They know our entire fleet and buses depreciate over 12 years. So theoretically, when that bus rolls off of depreciation on the 12th year, you have enough depreciation money to buy a new one to replace it. So they have a schedule for those. These are our current balances. So that's one of the reporting on the top. We've got that much money. We're buying a bus. It's supposed to arrive this month. The depreciation payment is coming in August. We always get that at the very end of the year. That's a close estimate to what that's going to be. So our ending fund balance will be about $358,000.
How much does a bus cost?
$199.42 for that Thomas Bill bus out there. Yep.
That's a new bus?
Yep. Yep. And also to be clear, the transportation vehicle fund pays for the very basic bus. So anything we want to add to it, like our software, the video cameras, automatic change, anything like that, that we pay for out of capital.
And that's replacing a 12-year-old bus?
Sometimes we keep buses longer than 12 years if they're in good shape.
Yeah.
But we stop earning depreciation on them after 12 years. So if we have to pay for licensing, inspection fees, stuff like that, we're not getting any revenue for that bus, and we do pay for the upkeep on it. We just sold a bus this last month for $1,500. That was $1,000. That was bus 34.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the depreciation schedule used to be, I think, 18 years that the state had, so.
That's better
So
for us.
they're paying more at the current schedule with 12 years.
I could fact check myself. I'm pretty sure it was 12, but
Yeah,
I'll make sure I get that number right. I thought I had 12 in my mind, but
okay.
I could be wrong on that. But essentially, the bus pays for itself over the lifespan of what's expected for the bus. So here's for next year, and there's a couple different figures there. And the reason for that is explained at the bottom there. Timing of bus delivery is challenging to predict. We may order a bus in October and it may arrive in June, which is what we expect this year. But if that bus gets delayed and it
It's 9 months to get a school bus?
sometimes longer. Yep. And that can be the challenge because they build them when we order them, right? They don't have them on a lot. But if that bus were to get delayed and arrive in September instead, then what the consequence for this year is nothing. We just don't pay that, but we had the opportunity to, but we saved that money. But if it arrives after August 31st, then it has to be in next year's budget. So if the bus gets delayed, arrives in September, and then next year's bus that we buy arrives in June, that's 2 buses in 1 year. So that's why you see up there, we're budgeting to spend $640,000 and anticipating an ending fund balance of $41,376. But if the bus arrives this month like it's supposed to, or even just anytime before the end of August, we only anticipate spending $276,000 on a new bus for next year. So we have an anticipated ending fund balance of $405,000. It's just not what we're budgeting. We're budgeting for the contingency that we would have to pay for 2 buses in 1 year because of the delivery schedule.
Do we have any leverage over when the bus is delivered, when you order it?
No.
I can get on the phone and call a few people. if you want.
You're pretty quick.
I think I'm making a headway.
It won't help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I buy equipment all day long and it's a
When you
year,
get it.
6, 7, 8, 12 months, or, you never know.
Yeah. So if they come early, they come late, and we get 2 buses in 1 year. This just gives us capacity to buy that. Otherwise, there's a bunch of paperwork, and then we approve a new budget extension. It's called an F-200, and OSPI has to approve
But
it.
when we order the bus, don't they know at that time how long it's gonna take to build it?
Yeah.
Depends on demand.
Yep.
Like
How many
Ford,
they're building?
Ford, for instance, we, 25 cop cars, and then they come back and say there's a problem with the cylinder manufacturer, so it's on
Oh.
hold, so the whole production line stops. And they gotta get it going through that, so we just sit and wait.
I will remind the board, so this is a good cautious way to cover both bases. I think it's a prudent way to have written it up. And also that the separate funds, in this case, transportation vehicle fund, can't be used for other expenditures outside of that. This is a enclosed fund only used for its designated purposes.
We normally buy 1 bus a year, but kind of
Typically, yeah, I think next year, we're planning to buy a large bus and a short bus.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. But it's based on the depreciation, right, and what we get. So we want to spend the depreciation. We don't need to sit on it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, any more
Yeah.
questions about the vehicle? Anticipated ending fund balance of over $400,000, but a budgeted ending fund balance of 41,000. All right. So the debt service fund is the clearinghouse for our payments to the outstanding loan. And it also does collect some state forest revenue. So you'll see on the next slide, I'll go to the next slide. Beginning fund balance, just over $7,000. The transfer in revenue comes from capital projects. And that's the levy collection. Money comes in. We push it to cover the payment for our loan that's out of that levy money, but the debt service fund serves as the clearinghouse. And you'll see the transfer in is less than the payment out. That's because that remaining balance in there of $7,222 will cover the interest, because the interest can't be covered by capital projects. It can be covered by either the state forest money that comes in through that levy to debt service or the general fund. So when we transferred the money out to capital, we left enough in there to cover all of our interest for next year. So anticipated ending fund balance of 1,423, and at that time, we could move that money out and close the account for all purposes except for collection of that levy funding, because we will have no more outstanding loans as of, let's see, our payment in December.
What would come up in the future where we would have a loan type of event?
Well, we've used the loans when interest rates are low. That the current environment would not be advisable to get a loan for capital projects, but when we had low interest rates, and that's why we're finishing off this loan, we were able to get more projects done as a result of getting those projects done before inflation added to the construction costs and paying a very low interest rate, we came out money ahead. But I just don't see until interest rates go back down, I don't see us looking to it.
I would agree with that. It's LGOs, they've taken out based on the levy collection. So you can accelerate those capital projects and get things done.
Now, the one caveat would be if we had an emergency, unanticipated, something that broke down, that we could see, that we could pay for it with future capital funds, there would be a possibility that we would decide that we needed to go the loan route. But we did the planned loan previously,
Right.
so that we could control our money flow and our construction.
The board may also decide at some point to take a short-term loan, for example, if we needed a project done over the summer. And we knew that we would collect that levy funding in like October, when that levy cycle comes in, but we need to get the project done while there's no kids here. So we take our loan in the spring, repay it that fall. And we have fairly good relationship with the county treasurer now, so we can even work with them to do something like that. But that would be just a very short term, so the interest payments would be minimal, but we'd have the funding in order to get the project done with no kids present. Okay, further questions on the debt service fund?
No.
Okay. The kids did a good summary of this for you, so that's how we'll shake it out. They talked about it at the last meeting, so I don't need to say too much more about it unless there's further questions. It has been posted on the website. It's required to be posted there before. Well, we made the deadline. I'm not sure when. Sometime next fall. So it's posted there and requirement is fulfilled. Questions about the AAP budget? Okay. Capital projects, estimated beginning fund balance 265,026. The revenue and expenditure both include that inflationary amount of $1,613,750. That is, the revenue coming in is the repayment of the loan from general fund, because we intend to move that fund and move those funds and start that loan sometime this month. I think we'll need it. But then again, we're going to turn around and loan it to ourselves again, because I anticipate still needing those funds in the future. So same day we repay it, we take another one out. We'll work with the county treasurer on that. So that's why the revenue expenditure look as high as they are. Ending fund balance 581,903. And that includes the loan payment out. This is our last payment in December. The Kendall fire suppression system. The 275 is lower than what the project will cost, but we have access to a state capital projects grant to help with that project.
Those were leaking pipes, right?
Yes. So the pipes are essentially too long and they sag, and then they leak at the bottom of the sag. So it needs to be moved from a wet suppression to a dry suppression system.
I see.
Yep. So it'll cost more than $275,000, but we have an emergency repair grant for $500,000 support, matching funds from the state. Yep. And then there's some other things in there: contracted services, supplies, technology, and some capacity as well. Because if we do need to fix something that needs fixed now, we want to have the ability to do that without waiting for OSBI to give us a budget extension. All right.
So wanted to point out on that one too, that in general, the capital projects fund is used just for capital, although we can transfer part of that to the operating budget for capital expenses that were incurred in the operating budget. Part of the maintenance staff, some other things such as that. Plus, it also gives us a source for our district loan, so that we're not, with that loan, we're paying ourselves interest, so we're not losing. It goes from one fund to another, but we're not paying that interest money to an outside entity that we would never see the money again. So
we also worked out a really good deal with the county treasurer. They've been great partners for us. So essentially, the interest on the loan that we loan ourselves to the general fund, the interest rate will be set on what the Whatcom County Treasurer investment pool earns. So say we have, we're able to keep 500,000 of that in our investments, then that will earn that same rate that we will then owe to the county treasurer. So they've been good partners in that. I appreciate that. It won't cost us extra. It's just a matter of we have to keep that money in investments and invest really aggressively. And then whatever we earn, we pay out.
I guess my only question is, we're looking at like some of the specific funds, but we didn't really talk about the overall fund balance.
So each one balances separately.
Okay.
Yep, so the capital projects has a fund balance of 581,903. Ending fund balance for the ASB 213,786. Ending fund balance for the debt service 1,423. And there's the budgeted and anticipated ending fund balances for the transportation vehicle fund. And
Right.
they're all separate.
Okay.
It's becoming more common, but less common to have to loan yourself money.
Right.
But that still doesn't change the actual fund balance when you loan it, because it
Right.
counts as, you know, it's owed to that fund, so it counts as a liability, so it doesn't change the fund balance.
I guess it's also sometimes you provide the information on our overall school fund balance.
General fund.
That's the general
Yeah.
fund. So these are the other four funds.
Oh.
Yep.
Are we gonna look at the general fund?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Get that
so you're saying next Wednesday, we should, so that if you could email or whatever the format that's gonna work best for board members to review, and I would encourage you to try to, if you could fit in meeting with individual board members, have questions, I would encourage you to meet with Brian individually and go over that so that you can understand it prior to our June 27th meeting, so all have the bulk of your questions answered ahead of time.
And I'd be happy to do that. I'm happy to answer questions as I can in the public meeting, but so these funds have been reviewed by the ESD. They sent back some minor feedback. I've fixed those problems. So these funds are pretty much, they're good to go. The general fund, there was more work to do after review, so it's still in draft form.
Right.
Yep, so you saw the draft preview last time.
Right.
And things are moving around, and I'm doing my best to keep it as close to what I presented in the draft
Right.
as I can.
Okay.
Yep, but that's a separate fund.
Right.
And all five of these balance individually, separately. Okay, good question though.
Well, I like that they're all positive numbers.
They are positive numbers.
That's good.
Yes, we're not going in the negative anywhere else.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, of
Okay, well, thank you, Brian.
course.
Next is superintendent's report.
So real quick, annually, we have to review the Mount Baker policy 3205, which is the sexual harassment of students prohibited policy. So I sent you that information. I just wanted to talk a little bit about who's involved in that in the review and what we came up with the recommendations, so that we can push this out. So as we had to have an ad hoc committee. I was part of that committee along with Dylan, Class B, Tori Favreau, Barb Hawkins was a volunteer, Bridget from our staff here, and Belva from the classified staff. So we each looked at the policy, looked at the related procedure to that, came up with some recommendations to make sure that we push this out to our staff, and we also push this out to our students as they come into the school, so they understand what sexual harassment is and how we deal with it. What came out of the recommendations is that all Mount Baker district staff should review Mount Baker policy 3205, sexual harassment is prohibited. We should all go through that. It's what you should know. And Nick does that as part of his HR policy reviews at the beginning of the school year. Bullet number 2, the Mount Baker School District should ensure policy 3205 related procedures are posted in all of our buildings. And then the third bullet that we recommended is Mount Baker School District should ensure that training on and orientation of the policy 3205 related procedures is a fixed component of all district orientation sessions for staff, students, and regular volunteers. So anybody working with students in our schools know and understand what this policy is about, know and understand what sexual harassment is, how we define it. And that is a really important part of what we should know and be able to do around sexual harassment. So just wanted to report out that we had the meeting. We discussed it. We came up with some recommendations. The recommendation really came out of the policy itself. And this is an annual review that we need to do as an ad hoc committee. So I'm just putting this on the table so that we do this again next year. And this was actually brought to our attention from the Cascadian News, and they were asking questions when I first came on board is, have we had this review? So I couldn't find anything that we had this review in the past, so this is review.
Okay.
Here we are. So, thank you.
Thank you. So next up is board discussion. Brian, I'll invite you back up again to
So he's gonna pull up a
provide
four-year.
the four-year budget. Yeah.
So this is something that we are required to do. It's a compliance. We have to do it for compliance as an activity, as an exercise. We know where we're headed this fall. We did a budget that's pretty conservative, so that helps us out. We have a 2-year contracts with PSC and NBAA, so going into the following year, we know what those dollars are gonna be. So part of putting a 4-year budget together is using what we know and then using what we don't know. And so we don't know what our enrollment is gonna be. We don't know what legislative action is gonna be. We don't know some of these things. So building out this budget for 4 years is pretty impossible to do, but we have to do it and run through this exercise anyway. So with our best guess, we have 23 and 24 is in there, 24, 25 is coming up, and then 26, 27, 27, 28 is based on what we know. So, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. So what you're looking at up there is, sorry, I was trying to get something else up here as well. First, to address the ending fund balance of the 23-24 school year. If you look at the bottom there, negative 579,019. That's different than what was presented at the draft budget. When we presented the draft budget, it was what was actually budgeted. That is our actual guess based on the change in the beginning fund balance. It does not take into account all the changes we made throughout the year. It just takes the budgeted ending fund balance and changes the beginning fund balance to the increased amount that came about in October. So that's the number there. You see that show up in 24-25 as the beginning fund balance. And then the revenues are pretty much based on enrollment, as they always are, right? This does not take into account any changes in the legislature. It does not make any major assumptions. It just says, these are our revenues based on, there'll be an increase of IPD, some inflationary measures will go up. So if you look at a trend over time, it's about 2% the budgets are going up over time. So that's the revenue trend that we're looking at. And we don't have a lot of control over that. So what we do have control over is that section in the middle, this expenditures. So then you look way down to the very bottom, fund balance as percent of total expenditure. All right, in 25-26, we're going to need to get to 4% to get out of binding conditions. So you take the revenue as it is and you pull it over, and then you say, okay, so what can we do in our expenditures to get to 4%? So that's my methodology for building this 4-year budget, is meeting the goals that we are required to meet. You see that by the end, 27-28, we get back to close enough, for me, at least. I suppose it's up to you. What is your 5% fund balance policy? And meet binding conditions in 25-26. So that's the methodology. Revenue is fixed. Revenue is based on enrollment. And then expenditures are what we can control. This was shared with you. Oh, Zoom didn't follow me. Sorry. Let me share a different screen, and then we'll get back to that one. All right. So this is what was shared with you in advance. So there's the 24-25 enrollment that's projected. There's 1448. That's the number we're working with. This does project a leveling off of the enrollment decline. But it also shows still a significant enrollment decline over time, down from where we are this year at 15 well, annual average FTE is right around 1510, and this shows that going down to 1361. So while it does level off, it does show a significant decline over time still.
So are these figures then reflected in the first page you showed us?
They are, yep. So I'm using these figures to drive that revenue. And then once the revenue is fixed, going back and working within the expenditures to make sure we can achieve our goals and what that looks like.
So you're taking these figures, adding a 2% inflationary factor, and that's the revenue.
Yep. Yes.
I know we talk all the time about enrollment, but what tools are out there that can predict enrollment based on birth rates and other trends?
We could hire a demographer.
Nobody
Yeah, right.
has that information.
I mean, I honestly, demographers do, and big districts hire them, and I'm sure, you know.
I've worked with demographers in the past. They're pretty good up to about 2 to 3 years, and then everything is guessing. And you're right, we're looking at county birth rates, where people live, housing developments, all of that. And they pull all of that together, and they give you a report. What we know here in Mount Baker, that we can look at birth rates, but there's no major housing developments happening, and so it looks like, based on our trend over the last several years, unless we start retaining some of our kids from that are opting out to go to other districts or online programs, our enrollment will continue to see a percentage loss, of course, the next several years.
If you look at that trend over time, you see the last, 4 columns there, the last 4 entries are showing that trend. So I think it's a reasonable one. You see a dip there in COVID, and then a pretty steady decline after that.
I guess what I'm wondering is if it would be better to have that slope stay constant rather than taper up for budgeting purposes.
So you had the 1% at the end, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I
don't think it makes any difference on the 4-year plan, because we just don't know.
Yeah, what OSPI, so, I mean, it's a good thought, and what that would show is much more, reduction in expenditure. It would show us planning for that, which we could do. If you look back at, sorry, let's go back and forth on Zoom here. And if that's what I'm directed to do by the board, that's what I will do. But if you look here, essentially, this year we reduced from 28.5 million to 27.1 million. That's the plan. And then reducing again next year from 27.1 to 26.9. And that helps us get to 4%. If we keep expenditures, if we keep the enrollment estimate going down, then instead of, the difference between 26.1 and 27.1 and 26.9, we could be going down to 25 and then down to 23 and then down to, right, pretty drastic.
I guess my thought is, if we don't know, constant reduction, we feel better about, we can do better than that rather than have to reduce it further.
Yeah, so and this doesn't lock us into anything.
Right.
OSPI traditionally, so the legislature wanted these created and OSPI never looked at them. I guarantee they're gonna look at ours this year. But what they want to see is that we're meeting our goals. So that's why I was presenting it with those goals in mind. There's the goals on the bottom line. Presented a.
Right. I'm just a little wary of enrollments that taper over the last few years. So,
Yep. But
a constant line is something that makes sense in my mind.
But every year we come back and we do this with that 1-year enrollment estimate.
Right.
Right. And that's the one that we have some confidence in. And then the farther out you get, the less and less confidence you have.
Right.
So, I mean, I can assure you that every year we'll be looking carefully at enrollment and making our choices for the next year that we're locked into with real estimates in mind, and you will be part of that process as the school board. Yeah. So if you'd like me to present a more dire situation, I certainly could. But the way I'm building this is for OSPI to look at it and give themselves a pat on the back and say, we helped them out of their problem.
Yeah, I think because of the variables, the four-year projection loses a lot of its meaning. So that the first 2 years of that, I think we have to look at most closely. We do a budget year by year, which we have to look very closely. But I think our confidence level is higher for the first 2 years in that, and I would caution against putting too much stock in the 4-year to the point that we're using to make concrete decisions.
Right.
That's the danger, because you need to make solid decisions, certainly for your 1 year, and you need to be thinking how they look for the 2 year. But if you make decisions that put you this way or that way based on the 4 year, when the enrollment numbers, when the state budget numbers are just balls in the air, I think you got to keep the decision making closer to the known facts. We're not working in a vacuum, and it changes the impacts on the children and the employees based on some of those decisions we make. So we need to keep those decisions closer to what our real known facts are.
So it looks like the end of the 25-26 school year, we'll have a positive fund balance. Okay. I mean, we know we have another tough year ahead of us, but that just kind of brings that point home.
Yep, and that will be what we expect our binding conditions from OSPI to say.
And how, do you have a best guess on when they'll, when, if they do amend those conditions, when we would see that?
They're aware of our hearing date and adoption date, and we need to have those before we adopt a new budget.
Yep, and that's the end of the month.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So last Friday, Lisa Matthews had a good chat with TJ Kelly. After Lisa and I spoke on Thursday and talked about what to say to TJ, and she's the ESD is also a very good partner in this, and everybody wants it to be successful, as I said before. So they're working behind the scenes to create binding conditions that help us get out of the situation and force us really to ensure we get out of the situation, but also that are reasonable, that we can meet.
Okay.
So their first binding condition that said, you know, have that fund balance in place by the end of 24-25.
Right.
You know, and then we lost 3% of regionalization.
Yeah. And how many people on their end need to approve that to make it happen?
Mostly just TJ. If I'm reading behind the scenes, TJ talked to Lisa, they are well aware of our situation and we're in close contact, and they decide what is reasonable for us, but also works for them for enough progress. And then TJ tells someone else to write it, signs it.
So this would be the first year that we end. Is this the first year that we're gonna end with a negative fund balance?
Yes.
So what does that mean in terms of being able to pay our monthly payroll and all that?
So good question. And we do have that loan, the $1.6 million and change that we're gonna push over, because I expect that we'll run out of cash entirely, even with the apportionment advance this month, because we start repaying that apportionment advance. So our apportionment will be low anyway, because it's low from the state, because they want it to be. And then they're gonna take about 500,000 back out. So with payroll around 2 million and apportionment coming in at around 700,000 if we're lucky, it's gonna wipe out the rest of what we have. So we apply that loan from the capital projects. And we had a good meeting with the county treasurer, Nick and Phil, and I were there with the treasurer, Steve Oliver, and his deputy, Karen. And we had been working on language. I know we've talked about it here, but we actually finalized the language and got it sent back. So you'll see that coming up to the next board meeting, where we can actually have $500,000 in a tax anticipation note of support from the county treasurer. And they anticipate, even though we don't anticipate, we may not even need it this year, but we want to have something on the book. So if we do run out, we don't actually run out. But they're prepared to support us in that process over the next 5 years while we build out of this.
The reason we're able to have a negative fund balance and still make payroll is because we've moved money from the capital fund to the general fund.
Correct.
I see.
And if we need to, we can borrow money from the county treasurer. Now that interest rate goes to the county treasurer and it's set at the Key Bank prime rate minus 1% because they do want to show support. So they're not going above or even at the prime rate.
Okay.
But it's still going to be higher than we want, which is why it's it's a contingency plan.
Right.
Yep.
And what's the likelihood of us getting a loan? County.
We'll have to wait and see. I feel fairly confident that we won't need it. And if we do need it, it will be short term. They want everything paid off by December 31st or December 16th, I think.
15th, yeah, 15th, 16th.
Yeah.
Middle of December.
Yeah. So it'll be a short term no matter what. But by then we'll have a new apportionment advance from OSPI if we need it.
You said our payroll is $2 million a month.
That's a rough estimate, and it will change with the new contracts and salaries. Staffing plans coming in.
One of the things that we should have in our minds is in terms of looking at 4-year projection is one of the factors with enrollment is the number of children living within the Mount Baker district that do not attend our schools. And I think Bill mentioned the other day that the estimate is somewhere around 300. A variety of whether they're homeschooling, not doing ALE, private school possibly, or attending an adjacent school district. And so to me, one of the keys with that group is understanding the variety of reasons going into the decision making, and then seeing how, if there are reasonable ways to make adjustments in our own program, and we're doing outreach, selling our schools, you might say, that those are measures that we can take at relatively, less cost than hiring a demographer, but that could possibly result in more children who already live here attending our schools. So it's how we go about trying to dredge up that information. That's something that as a whole team we need to be giving some thought to. But I just wanted to throw that out there as also, it's both a point of concern and a point of hope.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of momentum behind those decisions, so we can, momentum it takes us in the wrong direction. It takes a long time to help address those things and build momentum in the other direction.
Yeah. In some cases, it may be just wanting to participate on a particular team under a particular coach. I mean, there's sure. I remember one year we got 4 wrestlers from Nooksack Valley that preferred to be in our program. Yep. So it's a lot of individual and probably different reasons. Right. But I just wanted to put that out there. Other thoughts or questions or things you wonder about looking over the 4-year, either 2-year or the 4-year budget trajectory?
Just that I hope we can do better than 4%.
Over
Gotta
time,
walk before we run or crawl before we walk, right? But
Yeah. over time.
Yeah.
And I would have very little confidence in projecting a 28, 29, or 29 school year budget. So,
But if we keep hammering away at the legislature, that's another avenue to change some of those figures too. And there's, in talking with legislators about that, I think what how they're looking at it is so what's going to happen to tax revenue? And other expenses too, but primarily, are the voters gonna reject capital gains tax, for example? Which could lower state revenue and give them a lot less opportunity to add to, to actually bring the MSOC level up to where it should be, or the special ed funding up to where it should be. So we have to watch those things too.
What- maybe know what percentage of our overall state budget is education? Is it like 50%?
It used to be, I think we're down under 45% right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it used to be right around 50%. And so remember when McCleary happened, Washington State was rated number 42 in terms of school funding. And McCleary happened, we jumped up. And I think we're in the top 15, if I remember right. Now we've slid back
Mhm.
again. And
46.
Yep, 46.
46.
Yep, and we slid back and
That's not a very good number.
it's not a very good
In
number.
terms of dollar value or percent of state?
Percent of total state funding,
Okay.
total bit of.
But I think that when do that ranking, that also takes into account the way they do it as well.
Yeah.
And is it done in equitable ways or not?
And states have different funding, some states have income taxes and we don't, so.
Property value.
But I think even apart from where the revenue comes from, I think the point that we got up to, we were in the 40s, and then we got up to about 50% of the state budget, and now we're notching back down. Both K-12 and higher ed too. Higher ed
Higher ed's been hit really
is
hard.
even worse.
Yeah.
As far
That's
as
why they
state.
were recruiting our Running Start kids.
They make a lot of money at Running Start.
Mhm. And, and both of those are essential to a strong economy. K-12 and higher ed, you're not going, whether it's the tech college or whether it's a four-year college, we're not keeping up with the job needs with students educated within Washington State if we don't cover those two areas. So I think making, there's lots of, I see that drop off in the percentage of revenue that's going to education. A lot of it, at least in my perception, is going to buy nice Christmas ornaments to hang on the Christmas tree type thing. They're all things that you can make a good argument for. I mean, we need this and we need that, but they may not be in my mind, the core state expenditures. But anyway, anything else on the four-year budget? I wanted to briefly just touch bases on the leadership transition. So Ed brought up that we will continue with the superintendent search process that we laid out earlier. But we have talked in recent meetings about meeting the board, spending at least an hour with the admin team, including the principals. So and talking with Nick about when and how to schedule that, it looks like it would make most sense to do that in August. So Nick has a all-day meeting with the principals, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we fit in 1 hour with the board, somehow how that fits into the meeting, that would be about what would make sense. So is that,
Yeah, that's accurate. I exchanged some emails with Ed and Russ about the concept of it being the opening hour, you know, because as we get into that time of the year and before principals transition out, I've scheduled individual meetings with each of them as well as our directors of transportation and child nutrition. To get some thoughts and input about the office of the superintendent for the school district. So as I distill that information down and develop some themes, and kind of develop a more cohesive process for how to do that on a larger scale, in addition to just the building and district leadership. I think launching that day, that first hour of the full day, I'll be able to share with them and you simultaneously some of the things I've developed and what the next steps are. And I think it'll be a good chance for us to all kind of connect together and launch kind of the school year, even though it's mid-August and it'll feel too early for the school year, but maybe not. So, yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
If you have particular things that you would like to incorporate or have addressed, get them to me and Nick both, I think, probably. And then, or we can discuss it again in one of our meetings prior to then, but we wanna get the chance to get together in a meaningful way. So what you think might be most helpful in that board admin relationship. Next up is a meeting schedule. So our next meeting is June 29th and 27. Yeah, if someone's, sorry, don't come here late.
That'll be a Saturday.
June 27th.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're counting down. You know that better than I do. Good, June 27th, and try to get a chance to look at the budget as that's come through, and in particular, I think if you can meet with Brian and make sense of it, that would be, I think, very valuable. And so next up we have executive session. We have one bargaining update issue. It's going to take 15 minutes,
Yeah, we'll say
maybe,
about 15 minutes.
and no decision to be made afterwards. But I would like to sign the papers, any of the documents now before we go, before we have the executive session. And I'd like Nick and Phil to both stay for the executive session. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
We'll see you on Monday.
Yep.